A very happy morning to you all children. I hope you people are keeping yourself fit and enjoying your online classes every day. Children, I hope you all have received your notebooks last week and started using it. So it reveals that the days where we are going to meet each other is not so far and it is very close together. So let us hope for the day and let us begin today's class. Children, it is a continuation of the last week's class, friction. Last class, we have seen what is friction and what are the factors on which friction is depending upon. And today, let us discuss about the types of friction. When we see the types of friction, we have so many day-to-day activities related to these types of friction. Sometimes, if you are asked to lift a bag full of rice, you are not able to lift it. At the same time, what do? You try to drag the bag. You will be able to drag the bag on the floor, but you will be unable to lift it up. Suppose if you are helping your mom in cleaning the room and if she asks to reposition the sofa set, then what do? Literally you cannot lift it, but at the same time you drag it on the floor. And perhaps if the sofa set is fitted with wheels, as we have refrigerators and washing machines now, then you need to apply a little force in order to move it from one position to other position. So while lifting is difficult, dragging is little easy and moving on wheels is so easy. So this is the topic we are going to deal with today. So types of friction. So we will go into the lesson, children. We'll go and we will see about the types of friction.
Yes, children, we are going to see what are the types of friction. So we had seen about friction last week, and in today's class we are going to discuss about types of friction. There are totally 4 types of friction as far as you people are concerned in class 8. What are they? They are static friction, sliding friction, rolling friction and fluid friction. Now look into the pictures which are being illustrated in this slide. So some people are sitting on a boat and the boat is sliding over the surface of the ice. So it is an example of sliding friction, and below it you see many rocks are resting one upon the other. They are not found to be moving, so they are static. Therefore the friction exerted by them is static friction. And to the right you can find a man with a trolley having a huge box on the wheelbarrow. We call it as a wheelbarrow, where he can able to transfer the boxes from one place to the other place very easily with the help of the wheels which are fitted in the barrow. Therefore it is an example of rolling friction. And fluid friction is the friction exerted when a body moves in fluids. So in physics or in science, what are fluids? Fluids is in the form of air, water or any other liquid. So, the friction exerted by water or any liquid or by the air, we call it as fluid friction. Here a man is able to drive a boat on the surface of the sea. So, it is against the fluid friction. So, we will discuss about these frictions one in detail from the next slide. The four types of frictions, static, sliding, rolling and fluid friction, are explained again in this slide with the help of an example. For example, you take the first picture. A box is being kept on a surface and a force is acting on the box from left to right. Now, when a force is acting on the box and if the box is not moving, then there is static friction. So, the force which is given to the box is not enough to move the box to a further distance. In that case, the box is at rest and the force that you give doesn't make the body to move. So, it is an example of static friction. Now, come to the next one. Now, the force that you give to the object is large enough to move the box from one place to the other. In this case, the force that you give makes the box to move to a new position. That means the force is greater than the before. Now, the force which you give now, which makes the body to move from one position to the other position, is known as sliding friction. And then there is a cylindrical object, and a force is being given to the cylindrical object, and because of it the cylinder, which is in the form of a wheel, moves. Therefore, this friction is said to be rolling friction. And as we have discussed, on the right side we have fluid friction. So, fluids are majorly classified as air and water. So, the motion of an aeroplane in the space against air, it is called fluid friction, and it is an example of fluid friction. Similarly, the movement of the fish in water against the frictional force of the water, it is also an example of fluid friction. Now, static friction is being explained with an other example. Imagine in a box your brother is sitting inside. You want to transfer the box from one place to the other place. First, you are trying to lift the box and you find it very heavy to lift it up. So, what is the alternative? You try to give a force to the box so that the box can able to move. Now, you are trying to give the force, and as a result of it also the box doesn't move. So, it is an example of static force. The force that you give to an object doesn't make the object to move. Then there exists a friction called static friction. So, in static friction, Since the object is not moving, then there is no acceleration, and we call, or we can say, the acceleration exerted by an object for static friction, it is absolutely 0. Now read the slide here. Suppose your little brother gets into a box and wants you to move him. He is too heavy to lift. You try to push the box and it doesn't move. What type of acceleration does it have? 0 acceleration. So when there is 0 acceleration, the force that is given to the box makes the box to be in the same place, and so the friction exerted now in this situation, it is known as static friction. Now let us further discuss on static friction. We had already seen that this static friction prevents an object from moving when the force is applied and tries to keep the object at rest. So static friction tries to keep the object at rest. Example, walking. So walking is a very good practical example of walking. You might be wondering how. We walk by pushing the ground backward. At each step, we tend to push the ground backward by our feet. There is a tendency of our feet slipping backward. In that case, friction comes into play. If enough to prevent slipping, static friction acts in forward direction on our feet, enabling us to move forward. Just imagine if there was no friction, we would never been able to walk. You might have observed walking over a slippery surface gives difficulty. A fast runner or an athlete has more chance of slipping, hence requires more static friction. If static friction is not enough, friction would change to kinetic, thereby causing slipping. Therefore, children, we are able to walk on the ground with the help of the static friction. Got it?
Children, let us move on to the next type of friction, which is called as sliding friction. The word slide is a very familiar word to you, and when you go to a park, the most enjoyable game that you enjoy is the slide. So whenever you play the game slide, so you move upon the ladder and sit yourself and make yourself to move on the inclined plane. And this is called slide because it has the friction which makes it to move, and that friction it is called as sliding friction. So sliding friction occurs between two objects when any one of the object is in motion over the surface of the other. So sliding friction is a friction exerted on a body between the moving body and the stationary body, or sometimes both the body may be moving. So the friction exerted between these two objects which makes a movement, then it is called sliding friction. Children, we have seen that sliding friction is the movement of one of the objects over the surface of the other. Let us see some of the examples of sliding friction. The first example which is given here is skis sliding against the snow. So the game snow skating, it is called snow skating, is enjoyed by many mountaineers. It is called ski sliding. So this ski sliding is a perfect example of sliding friction because they slide and they move themselves over the surface of the ice. Next is a vegetable drawer sliding against the holder in the fridge. So this is a very common example that we do or that we encounter in our daily routine of life activities. So whenever we want to open the drawer, then we slide this over the surface of the rollers. Therefore, it is an example of sliding friction. Today's common example is the next example. So for the present situation, we are often need to clean our hands with the help of sanitized liquid which is stored in the bottle. So when you want to clean your hands, then what you do, you press the head upon it. So when you press the head upon it, then the tube slides over the mouth of the bottle, and then the liquid is ejected out. And this is a quite practical example of today's situation. And the last one is a rag and the counter it is being used to clean. So whenever you want to clean, we use a rag, and we used to pull the rag in different directions, and so the rag moves on the surface of the floor or the cleaning surface in the direction where we are moving. So these are the practical examples which we are seeing for sliding friction. The sliding force is minimum force required to make a body just to slide over the surface is the sliding friction. The minimum force required to make a body just to slide over the surface is called the sliding friction. Once a body starts sliding, the sliding friction is reduced. It is less than the static friction. It is the rubbing of bodies in sliding contact. So we can illustrate so many examples for this sliding friction. So we will see it in the next slide. What is the effect of this sliding friction? It slows down an object that slides over the surface. If you push a box across the room, there is a sliding friction between the bottom of the box and the floor, and there else it slows down the movement of the object. So it can be extended for examples like rubbing of hands. When we rub our hands, then we execute sliding friction, and the movement of our hands can be seen slows down during the process of rubbing. So these are the effects of sliding friction. The next friction that we are going to discuss is rolling friction. So rolling friction is occurring when there is a wheel. So where is the wheel fitted to an object? There exists rolling friction. So you have learned in history the wheel has made a greater revolution in the life of people. So as well as in friction now. So let us see to the definition of this rolling friction. The friction that occurs when an object rolls across a surface. So this is easier to overcome than sliding friction. Example, anything with wheel. cars, skateboards, or ball rolling. So we will discuss more examples in the next slides. So rolling friction is still less than the sliding friction. So when a ball roll or when your wheel rolls, you see to the diagram, it moves in the direction from left to right, making it to rotate in clockwise direction. And in the opposite direction, there exists a force of friction between the wheel and the floor, and that is the rolling friction in that object. Children, look at the picture given in this slide. It is a game called bowling the ball, and you would have seen this either in picture or practically in a big mall. So people used to enjoy this game, and there is a physics behind the game here. The game says we have to roll the ball. The ball will be heavy with a lot of holes on its surface. You have to insert your middle finger into the ball and keep fixed the ball with the other fingers. There will be a long, smooth, narrow path, and through which you have to slide, not slide actually, you have to roll the ball on this smooth platform. After rolling, it will hit some of the objects which are kept on the other side. These objects are called pins. Once when all these objects, so-called pins, they fall, then that is the winner of the game. So people used to enjoy this game, and the physics behind this game is you are rolling the ball on a smoother surface. So you have to aim the objects, and you have to keep the ball in position, and you have to release the ball with your force so that you will be the winner. So while rolling the ball on the surface, there exists a friction called rolling friction. So rolling friction is friction that occurs between the surface in motion, in which one of the surface is a wheel or a roller or a ball. Now let us see some of the practical examples of rolling friction in our next slides. Children, in this picture you can see many examples which we come across in our day-to-day life, which sets an example for rolling friction. The first picture is a metal wheel which moves on the metal track, and the next is the skating shoes where it is being fitted with wheels, and just now we have seen about the bowling the balls game, and car tires are fitted with wheels so that there exists a good motion, so as the bike tires, as well as the last one, the luggage suitcase are being fitted with wheels so that it is very easy to roll the luggage rather than dragging it. The last type of friction that we are encountering now is fluid frictions. As I have told you, what are fluids? Fluids are a common word which refers to both air as well as liquids. It can be any liquids. So collectively these two mediums, we call it in physics as fluids. So there exists a friction when an object moves in fluids. Either it may be air or it may be a liquid medium. So you see to the examples given here, the bird flies in the air. When the bird flies in the air, it has to overcome the air resistance. So as well as when you see a fish swimming inside the water, it has to overcome the fluid friction. As well as an aeroplane which flies in the space also, it has to move against the air friction. The last one, you can see the rocket which is being launched in its launching station. So it has to overcome the frictional force which is called as the drag here. So the frictional force exerted by the liquids, it is called fluid friction. Fluid friction is the force of friction exerted by liquids and gases on the objects moving through them. Fluid friction depends upon the speed of the object, shape of the object, the nature of the fluid. Birds flying in air have streamlined body to reduce fluid friction. Fishes living in water have streamlined body to reduce fluid friction. Aeroplanes and spacecrafts have streamlined body to reduce fluid friction. So this topic where we are reducing the friction, we will discuss separately in the next class. This slide you can find some more examples for the fluid friction. So surfboard on the wave. So people used to enjoy the surfing of the waves using a board, and this is an example of fluid friction. And persons diving into the water. So you would have seen the game also. People will be standing on a long bench and they will be diving into the swimming pool or the water bodies where they will be moving themselves against the surface of the air. So skydivers, similarly, skydivers are the one who uses parachutes, and these skydivers, before opening the parachute, they will be moving down with a greater force, and as soon as they open their parachute, their motion, the speed becomes less, and because of the frictional force exerted by the air. Children, and we come to the end of today's lesson, and in this today's lesson we have discussed about the types of frictions. To recall, what are the types of frictions we have seen? First, it is static friction, where the object is not moving even if you apply the force. Then after that, sliding friction. The sliding friction is the one where the object moves because of the force, and this force is greater than the static force. And next is the sliding friction. Sliding friction is the one where the object starts moving over the surface of the other. And next, rolling friction. Rolling friction is the friction exerted between one body over the other, where a wheel plays a vital role. And then lastly we have seen fluid friction, the friction exerted by the fluids which are air as well as liquids in common. So children, just go through these slides as long as you get understand, and I will give you about the homework separately. So that's all for today's lesson, children. Okay, bye bye. We'll see you in the next week.